This idea of like, what do you do with an interpersonal degree? Like, what can you do with that? I didn't want to work in the corporate world.
Teens are having a lot more anxiety and depression for that.
You woke up to 500,000 views on your first Tic Tac back in October 2020.
It's easier said than done, right? It's easier said than done, though. That's the problem.
Right.
Like, we all know it. It's like...
And I'm going to be so mad at you guys if you make me cry right now. But no one's ever specifically asked me if I got Lil and Lily photo. She just grabs my butt. And I was like... It was wild. It was wild. I was like, okay, well, I guess that's something we have to worry about now. You know, I was tanking for a really long time. I had hit about 2.4 million on TikTok, dramatically free falling.
I'll double check, but don't worry, this will be edited out. Don't worry.
You shouldn't. That's hilarious.
The Avenue of the Strongest is a podcast dedicated to exploring the lives and experiences of the most inspiring individuals from around the world. Each episode features interviews with fascinating guests who share their insights and wisdom on a variety of topics, including education, impact, motivation, health, and learning. I'm your host, Ania Chowdhury.
And Vlad Suleiman.
And we are excited to introduce our next guest. Today we have the pleasure of being joined by Tel Williams, an educator, comedian, actor, podcast host, and social media influencer with a combined following of nearly 3 million fans.
And her head really starts spinning when I say I'm a teacher. And she goes, I guess that makes sense of why you're drinking at 6 a.m. Like, ma'am, you can't judge me. These are breakfast drinks. It's called a tequila sunrise for a reason.
Our guest today has nearly a decade of experience as an educator, having worked in public and private schools, serving as a lead teacher and child family advocate for the Head Start program. He recognized the need for a more equitable and inclusive curriculum, particularly in the wake of the pandemic. This inspired him to pursue a degree in social work with the aim of advocating for marginalized communities. Currently pursuing a graduate degree in clinical social work, Tel is also traveling the country doing stand-up on his comedy tour. You can find his hilarious content on TikTok, Instagram, or find him as a co-host on the world's #1 teacher podcast, Teachers Off Duty. Tel, welcome to the show.
Thank you. What an introduction.
Thank you for being here. I want to first start off and say, I saw your story yesterday. I know you got screwed by American Airlines. What happened over there? This podcast is sponsored by ArgoPrep, an award-winning educational publisher serving over 1 million students nationwide. If you're a kindergarten to 8th grade teacher or principal, be sure to check out our supplementary workbooks to get your students ready for standardized state testing. We cover all subjects from kindergarten to 8th grade. Use the coupon code AVENUE for a 25% discount off of all purchase orders. Visit us today at argoprep.com/store.
So it might be some of it my mistake. I saw that there was a really small airport in the city we're in, Columbia, and I was trying to get home. My husband had a surgery yesterday morning, and I was trying to get home in time for, when he gets out and such. And so I decided to use this small airport because it got me home at like 11 a.m. And they delayed my flight so much that I would have missed my connecting flight, and it would have put me home to like 9 p.m. So almost 12 hours after I was supposed to be. So the only thing I could do was get a refund for that ticket, but then shovel out like close to $1,000 to get home, so I could get home before, midnight, essentially. So it was a journey yesterday.
That's certainly not your fault. We're going to blame it on American Airlines. I'll tell you why. I was in Texas a week ago for a concert, and I never fly American Airlines. I always have bad experiences with American Airlines. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
American
That's a nice
Airlines,
advertisement right here.
Yeah, right.
Please don't sue us. But I was delayed both ways. Flying from New York City and then flying back. It was not a fun experience. So you know what?
No.
It's not the small airport. It's just American Airlines.
I like that. We'll go with that. That makes me feel better.
So I have a serious question. How do you manage all this? You're doing so many things. It's so impressive. You're going to be in Milwaukee tomorrow. You're in grad school. You're studying. You're submitting homework, or I don't know what you guys do in grad school, but I'm sure it's serious stuff. You create social media content. You have to put out content on TikTok, Instagram. You're also the co-host on the podcast.
Yeah.
That's a lot of stuff.
It's a lot. I don't know. I blame it on going years with undiagnosed ADHD. And although I'm diagnosed, medicated, and have therapy for it now, I think my brain works on this, being able to put my hands in every single pot. It's a little overwhelming. I don't realize until, we go to these long stretches of time where I have a moment of rest where I'm like, I'm exhausted. When's the last time I got, more than 3 or 4 hours of sleep in a night? Um, I don't know. I'm looking forward to finishing grad school. Right now, a lot of it is more of practice than anything. So
Okay.
there's small assignments that are due, but mainly classes right now are to help us. We are all in our specialized field now. So I'm actually a therapist as we speak. I have a client at 1:30 today. So that's the last few weeks is actually just kind of honing the practice of what it
Right.
means to be a therapist, meeting with your clients, and then the hopes are that when you graduate, you continue with these clients in the practice you're at.
That's incredible. So I want to start off
Yeah,
from the beginning. I want to
yeah,
ask you, what was life like growing up as a middle child in a conservative town in northern Indiana to an American father and a Puerto Rican mother, right?
yeah. It was interesting to say the least. I grew up in Indiana when Mike Pence was our governor, but on the flip side of that, Pete Buttigieg was our mayor. So, it was like, it was interesting. I always had, I'm fortunate. I've had very, very supportive parents and siblings. I don't think everyone's always that lucky. And the area I grew up in, it was conservative. A lot of, spaces there had little pockets though of I wouldn't even say a political spectrum of conservative and liberalism, but just kind of showing you what it means to be kind, what it means to do better or be better. How do we be inclusive? How do we be anti-racist? How do we be accepting of all identities? And so I tried to find those little pockets everywhere I went. And it was when I was into those pockets that I realized kind of you don't know what you don't know, and you can't do better if you don't know better. And my parents were great, but my mom was from Ay Bonito, Puerto Rico. She moved from Ay Bonito to the Bronx to Indiana.
Okay.
Um,
Wow. That's a
was
what a journey.
what a journey.
Yeah.
um, so I think it was a lot of it was her trying to assimilate to an American culture and identity once getting here, which is very white.
Right.
And then my dad, he grew up in a time where he thank God doesn't have the same ideals that his parents did, but I was fortunate to have the support of my family, even if the community wasn't as supportive as I had hoped.
I'm really happy to hear that. That
Yeah,
actually brings me a lot of joy because I know so many people. It's quite the opposite story.
yeah,
So
yeah.
the journey is already hard, right? But if your parents aren't supportive, it just makes it so much harder.
Oh, 100%.
So talking about family, I know your mother was an incredible role model, right? She
Yeah,
changed the lives of so many families and
yeah,
children with her work. So subconsciously or consciously, she
yeah,
probably inspired you to go into what you're doing today.
yeah,
So I know you. So you went to college first, and you
yeah,
studied interpersonal communication, right?
yeah, yeah.
So walk us through that time. How do you go from interpersonal communication to like a lead preschool teacher?
So my goal, I when I started school, I wanted to be a therapist. This was, in 2009, so a long time ago. And I had looked into this idea of doing sex therapy and talking to people who've been abused and my mom was like, "How am I going to explain to people you're a sex therapist?" I'm like, it's just a regular therapist, Mom. What do you
Right.
think that?" And so when I graduated, it was kind of this idea of like, what do you do with an interpersonal degree? Like, what can you do with that? I didn't want to work in the corporate world. And as I was trying to figure this out, I went through a really bad breakup and moved back home with my mom. And I was crying on the couch for 2 weeks, watching every episode of
Yeah.
Sex in the City. Um, and my mom finally was like, "I love you, but you need to do something." And so she had worked as a social worker for the Head Start program, and was like, "While you try to figure it out, why don't you come and sub? At least it gets you out of the house." And I was like, how hard can subbing be? It's hard, but
Yeah.
I loved it. I loved working with the kids. I did for about a month, and they offered me a permanent position when one of the teachers had left in October of that year.
Wow.
and I've been doing it ever since. They sent me back to school. They paid for my degree going back to school for a transition to teaching program, and I fell in love with it.
That's
Wow.
incredible.
You know, it's very nice to hear when people saying I have a supportive mom.
Yeah,
And I mean, this is so rarely nowadays. I don't know
yeah,
why, but stories like this,
yeah,
make me happy.
yeah.
Um, okay, for the listeners that may not know, your
Uh,
TikTok career started out from
yeah.
a family group chat where you would
Yes.
share memes and videos, correct?
Uh-huh. Yep.
So your brother-in-law gave some words of encouragement, and after posting your first video, you woke up to 500,000 views on your first TikTok back in October 2020.
Yeah.
You addresses issues related to education, including systematic inequalities and innovative teaching methods.
Yeah.
So how do you see social media playing a role in shaping the future of education?
Oh, huge. It's huge, right? I think that specifically TikTok, right? TikTok is this completely different force of nature. And we're seeing stories of people we didn't necessarily see when we were on Instagram or on Facebook. Facebook required us to read, and we didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
Instagram, people were posting more pictures than anything. So TikTok was this idea of being able to scroll and see people's stories in a minute at first, and now 2 minutes, now 10 minutes, and we've been able to see what educators are really going through, right? And we've been able to see what some students and some families are really going through. And I think as we hear these stories, and as we see more of these stories, as we have people that are better able to advocate and put their story of advocacy up there, I think it's slowly changing how we perceive. I know for me, this was never something I intentionally want to do. At the end of the day, if I woke up tomorrow and my social media was gone, I would feel good making the connections I had with teachers and knowing that at that moment I was able to. But it's influencing this and what I want to do, with the rest of my life on social media. But I see from so many teachers, including myself, that it was nice to see I don't feel so alone. And when you
Yeah.
realize that you aren't the only one feeling this way, there's power in that. And it gives you a boost to advocate, not just for yourself, but for your students as well. And I'm hoping that as, there's power in numbers, as more of us see each other's stories, that it better puts us in a position to advocate as a whole for everyone. I'm hoping.
Talking about TikTok, I want to talk about the famous TikTok filter. You made a video on this.
God.
First of all, everybody looks good in that filter. You look amazing. Listen, that TikTok, I don't know what's going on, but you can you can put your hands all over your face. It's
Right.
incredible. Now, I think it's awesome, but
Yeah.
my only concern is when it comes to the younger generation, right?
Yeah.
Like you have young teens that are getting on TikTok. And
Mhm.
first of all, for anyone who's saying, well, just don't give TikTok to young teens, you have no idea how hard it is to
Right.
stop
Right.
teenagers from forget about teenagers. A 10-year-old is getting their
Right.
hands on a phone nowadays. They
Right.
absolutely kill their parents.
Right.
But I am really concerned about this because, when you start scrolling through all the feed and you're like, wow, his face is so symmetrical and her face is so symmetrical and
Right.
he looks good and I look good.
Right.
And you look at yourself in the mirror and you're in puberty and you go through, hey, I have a pimple here.
Right.
It's really concerning because obviously there's so much data that shows that teens are having a lot more anxiety
Mhm.
and depression for that. So both of us being educators, what advice can you give to parents when it comes to social media for their children?
I mean, I think it's important that we have honest conversations with them, right? Not long ago, Instagram was found to have known that they're causing intentional harm on children with body issues, and
Right.
Instagram. I mean, it's now a lawsuit that's happening there, and the CDC just announced the demographics of depression and suicide ideation for young girls and LGBT kids, and a lot of this is stemming from social media, and whether it's the filters on social media, whether it's bullying that they're getting on social media.
Yeah.
I think one, letting your children know what is going on with social media. Read these articles about Instagram or what the CDC had said from good news sources, but also look at who they're following, right? Like I've never been one to lie about things that I have. Like, there's jaw filler here, there's cheek filter here, there's lip filler here, there's Botox. I'm not going to be a person who gets on, because I've done that, and I'm not going to lie. The worst my confidence has ever been was when I blew up on social media, right? Because people feel very I think they have the autonomy to say, make a comment to you on there where they might not think it's going to affect you, but it does. And at 31, a practicing therapist, and knowing a lot about mental health. I have a hard time just now learning how to navigate and to say, well, this is what that person's comment is, says more about them than me. I don't know how a 10-year-old can do that. And I think it's important parents to remember too. I always, as an educator who talks, I make my content for adults, for other educators. I don't make it for students. It's also important to remember, if you're seeing things online and a parent's like, oh my gosh, I don't want my kid to see that, there is a age requirement to be on these apps. And whether it is hard to get a kid who wants to be on the app, but ask yourself too, is it developmentally appropriate for a 10-year-old to be exposed to that? I don't know if you've swiped TikTok, but I don't think our human minds are meant to see in one TikTok a dog, barking at a chicken that's making us giggle, and then the next one to see someone in hospice care. That does something to someone's head. I'm 31 and does it. I can't imagine a 14-year-old seeing that.
I mean, first of all, also parents have to limit the use themselves.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It's not. The couple of weeks ago, we've been speaking with Dr. Shafali, and she was telling that you have to make a contract with your kids.
Yeah.
You have to know their passwords. You have to know their logins and everything. So you can come in and check everything and what they're watching, what they're following, and so on.
It's easier said than done, right? It's easier said than done, though. That's the problem.
Right.
Like, we all know it. It's like, we all know it. It's just hard to do when your kid's trying to throw blocks at you. Like, give me that. I'm going to throw a dumbbell at you if you don't give me that phone right now.
And, it is hard, right? But I also, as an advocate, not just, again, for educators, but for students and for children, right? Some of these tech companies have to step in, right? And some of these social media companies have to come in. Maybe, it's hard because there's a positive and negative to it. Should a app, if they're on a Instagram at 14 years old, maybe every message gets duplicated and goes to parents. But then you think of the flip side of that is, if the parents are the ones causing the abuse and the child's reaching out to someone for help, the parents get that message. So it's like, it's so hard to figure that out. How do you balance without overstepping? But that, to be completely transparent, that's why I don't have kids. That's why my husband and I don't want kids, is because it's a scary world, and I don't know that I would know how to navigate that, right? That's hard. It's so hard to figure out. I think that what parents can do is lead by example, though. I love the idea that kind of starts there. If the parent is also scrolling their phone mind-numbingly, I see, videos of people on an iPad with the phone in their hand watching TV. And it's like, if that's what you're showing kids and then telling them to get off their phone.
Exactly.
Where's that message? Yeah.
So speaking of technology, let's speak about the artificial intelligence. So we've seen a huge rise in AI recently, and platforms there, they get advanced really quickly, like chatbots, digital assistants. They provide quick and convenient answers to any complex questions. This is insane. So they can answer any prompt assigned to them, making homework as a breeze, generate factually accurate essays in seconds, write code, create content, and much more. So while these tools offer many benefits, they also raise concerns about the potential for students to take shortcuts or rely too heavily on technology. So how do you see AI impacting education in and out of the classroom?
That is such a tough one, because in some cases for businesses, I think AI would help, right? If you don't have to, but in school, my husband's a college professor, an English college professor that teaches first year writing sometimes. And so this idea that some could go, and it's plagiarism, right? I mean, it's not your work. You're taking credit for something else. But you're right. It happened so quickly to us, right? Maybe Google and all these companies knew it was in the works, but I feel like I heard about it one day, and literally the next day I could go onto a site and make an essay, which I have. We did it, for Teachers Off Duty, the podcast. We thought it'd be funny to see if what the prompts could do. And it got kind of scary after a while, because you're like, you keep playing with it and it gets to know kind of your lingo a little bit better. And I'm like, we've strayed too far. We're going into the AI movie that was out a few years ago. It's wild to me. And it makes me kind of bummed out. So where's our I think our creativity then, we're not challenging ourselves enough.
No, I agree. And it's so funny because you're right. One day we woke up and all of a sudden it's like an AI explosion for
Yeah.
the consumers, for
Yeah.
everybody out there. It's crazy. I mean, ChatGPT got over 1 million users in the shortest time frame, even faster than Facebook and Instagrams. And it's pretty obvious why. But I want to go ahead and start talking about your comedy tour. Okay.
Yeah.
So tomorrow you're flying out. You mentioned to me before we started, you're flying out at 4 a.m. Is the flight at 4 a.m. or you have to be at the airport at 4 a.m.?
The flight leaves at 5 a.m. So the board's at 4:20, and then so I have pre-check, and the pre-check line opens at 4, so I can't get there any earlier than that. So I get in there at 4 a.m.
Okay, so you're traveling all over to do this comedy show, which is incredible. I have to ask you, do you have any pre-show rituals before you hit the stage? I have to ask that. I mean,
I think this is probably going to tell you a lot about where my my priorities lie. But my pre-show ritual has been attending class before I go. I have. I actually I'm in class on Zoom, and I'm like 1 second I go out there, do my 20-minute set, I come back, and I attend the rest of my class session. If I don't have class, but I kind of started tapping into something I used to do when I was in middle school, high school, college. I was a musical theater kid. I still try to do a show at least once a year. But which is every person who's listening who has done musical theater is going to say, you're not supposed to do that. But I would eat like a little thing of ice cream before going on, which is horrible for your singing and all that stuff. I don't sing well anyways, but I've been trying to, before I leave the hotel, they pick us up and we go there. I'll get it like a little mini M&M McFlurry from the McDonald's. And I'll have a little bit of that before going. It just kind of, I don't know. I don't know that it even helps at this point. I think what it does, it just kind of makes me nostalgic, and it kind of reminds me, you can go up and perform for 20 minutes in front of people. How many other times have you had ice cream right before a show, and you did that just fine. So I think it's like a humbling thing a little bit too, to remind me that it doesn't matter if I was doing a community theater production in 6th grade or performing in front of 2,500 people.
So now, of course, you're traveling to different cities. I want to ask you a personal question.
Mm-hmm.
Do you get lonely in the hotel room? Like, I'm only asking that because, again, I was in Texas. It was my first time ever flying solo. Usually my friends will go with me, or my wife. I'll convince somebody to go with me. This time, nobody wanted to go with me. I was super excited. And besides the concert, I was like depressed, just sitting alone in my hotel room, having nothing to do. I can't go to a restaurant myself. It just felt weird. So am I the only one? Or I wonder, how do you feel sitting alone in a hotel room? Or do you just have so much work anyway, it doesn't matter?
It's so funny. I was telling my agent about the brief you sent. I'm like, they know so much about me. And I'm going to be so mad at you guys if you make me cry right now. But I do. I actually, the first run it was this time last year, this exact week last year was the first time running, doing the tour. I got home on a Sunday and I started therapy on Tuesday. It's a different kind of lonely. Social media influencing is a strange thing, right? It's a different kind of, and I don't consider myself at all a celebrity, at all famous. It's a different kind of celebrity though, where if you are obsessed with George Clooney, you don't know intimate details about his life necessarily. Right. He does not sit in front of a camera lens and tell you a story about his day, where influencers do that. So people feel this connection to them. And although I love to advocate for my followers, I don't know them or their stories. So it's kind of a one-way relationship. So when you're doing a comedy tour and there's the option to do a meet and greet with that person afterwards, that person feels like they know you and they understand you. And I don't know who they are. I have never seen their face. They've seen mine though. So I call it the giver syndrome. What they do is they will come up to me a lot of them will give me a portion of their trauma. They'll tell me something that,
Mm.
I've had people tell me that I saved their trans kid from committing suicide, that they were so depressed, but they saw the video I made about losing my mom. And so they felt less alone. And so they do this. And then you go back with their trauma to an empty hotel room. And that's hard. And
That's
it's lonely. Yeah.
that's such a good point. Wow, I never
Yeah.
thought about that. You're
Yeah.
that is so right. As an influencer, you're literally spilling your guts, and you're right. The people that are watching at the other end know you very well. You
Yeah.
don't know them, as opposed to celebrities. But wow,
Yeah.
I didn't mean to take it into a depressing,
No,
way, but that is a wow.
yeah, I'm glad you said that. I think also I've done these interviews before, but no one's asked me that question. No one's ever asked, like, I think everyone asks about tour and if it's fun, but no one's ever specifically asked me if I got lonely or depressed in the room. And so that like pulled on my heartstrings a little bit.
Well, I suppose. Well, thank you for that. I mean, we do 5 to 6 hours of prep
Yeah.
for each interview,
Yeah.
and we don't typically like asking superficial questions. It's like,
Yeah.
I want to get to know you,
Yeah.
and things like that. So I'm glad that I've asked you something that people don't typically like asking you. But I'll switch topics briefly over here. And so I know your friend Kylie Ham once said, teaching is like doing stand-up comedy, but nobody is laughing. Given that you are a teacher and you do comedy, is that true?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, I feel like when you go up there and you're joking with the kids, they some of them think that you're hilarious, but for the most part, it's just the whole time just straight faced. Yeah, and I think it's funny that she said like she teaches older kids, but so I think that might be more difficult. I at least know that sometimes they don't get my humor because I'm being sarcastic, and a 4 or 5-year-old doesn't get sarcasm yet. But it feels like you could be juggling with a herd of feral cats while jumping through a fire hoop, and the kids would be so unfazed by you. So it's hard. It's hard to keep them entertained.
All right, let me ask you: is there any crazy story about an on-stage fan, something that you were performing and somebody in the audience did something crazy, or has that not happened? I know you have a lot of crazy stories about being a teacher, because obviously who doesn't?
Yeah.
But I wonder if that has happened while you were doing like stand-up and performing.
Yeah, I'll try to think about how to not say identifying things. So I don't want I had a family come to see not my family, just a family come to see the show, and it wasn't during the show. I think the wildest thing is the first time I ever walked out there to do a comedy show this year. I think in Philly, and they play you a little intro song, and people didn't come down until almost the end of the entire song, and that was such a humbling moment for me. But we were doing a meet and greet, and I always wear some kind of ridiculous outfit, whether it's rhinestone pants, leopard print pants, bell bottoms, anything. And I'm taking a picture, and the mom was there with her 2 daughters. One was older; she was a teacher. The other one was, I think, about in high school, which I still was like, I don't know. This isn't a high school show. I'm used to going to comedy clubs where you have to be 21 and up. So this was a very strange thing that the person was like 17, 18, and the mom's here. And the 2 daughters are on the other side, and mom groped me during the photo. She just grabs my butt, and I was like, and then she's like, oh, sorry. She goes, oh, sorry, but while it's there, and they just kept it there for the photo. And I was like, why would you think that's an okay thing to do? And so I thought maybe it was a one-off thing. But I would say about every other day, someone tries to go in and grab me. So now with the company manager, we have like a look that we give, but like, such a strange thing that I didn't realize that it would be such an issue with straight women. I don't know if it's because they think we're BFFs, like it's the gay guy and the straight woman. But it's one of those times again where it's like, you don't know me as well as you think you do. And even then, there's very few people in my friend group, in my world, if any, that I think would feel like that it would be an okay thing to do.
Yeah.
So that was just probably one of the most wild things, and I couldn't help at the time but laugh, because I was just told how much the high school daughter and the teacher daughter absolutely loved me, and they were just so sweet. And I thought, I can't even say anything about this right now because I would hate to embarrass them.
Yeah.
But I was like, it was wild. It was wild. I was like, okay, well, I guess this is something we have to worry about now.
That's crazy. That goes back to people are obsessed with you, right? They know every story of your life, and then they just think they can do things like this, which is not fair, that's
kids were
absolutely
around.
ridiculous.
The
And
what?
the kid was
And kid was around. Wow.
Yes. Right. And I think that was the weird thing too, is there's a photo being taken and then there's a line of people this way. And I thought, how do I react to that? I was telling someone this, like, didn't this happen to Taylor Swift during a meet and greet one time? I was like, I don't know, but if it did, God bless her. Cause that was like, no, I'm so good at advocating for others. I'm so good about talking about bodily autonomy. I mean, God, as a pre-K teacher, you want kids to know, hey, this is an okay touch. This is not an okay touch. Like that's,
right.
You start to tell kids that right away. If you tell them that at a younger age, they're way less likely to experience abuse, as they get older. And it was one of those moments where I was like the fight, flight or freeze. And I just was like, I froze. I was like, I don't even know what to say to this. And I was like, thank God it wasn't a traumatic thing, right? For me at that moment, I think it didn't feel traumatic or anything like that. But for others, it probably could have, but it was one of those moments where I'm like, what the hell is wrong with people?
But the bottom line is that's not okay. That is not remotely okay. You cannot do that.
No, not at all. It was like I said, it was truly wild to be there, and I was like, what?
Does this just happen to me? Yeah.
Right. I'm gonna wear a frock now, just like a hospital nightgown.
I mean, it's all experience. At least now you know how you will react if it's happened again, no?
Right. Now we build a plan now that if it happens again, so
physical violence.
Right. Oh God.
Okay. So for you being a preschool teacher, your experiences definitely gave you knowledge on how to effectively communicate with your audience.
Yeah.
So you are the co-host of the world's #1 teacher podcast, Teachers Off Duty. Mm-hmm. With that being said, can you share any insights or strategies for engaging with your audience and expanding your reach?
There are obviously things that you can do to be, because it is a form of communication, a better communicator with social media. I think a lot of that is looking at things that matter to you, things that you feel very strongly about. Chances are someone else feels the same way. So I always try to connect on that level. We're kind of moving towards this area of wanting less superficial things on our social medias, right? Every once in a while, we want something brain numbing to watch someone get ready with me or something. But I think we're now looking for more stories and storytelling. Also, as humans, we want validation. We want to feel validated. And so I think when you're able to get on a platform and validate people, that's going to exponentially help your growth in that area. I also think it's kind of with the same things of I want disclosures on if I look a certain way and someone looks at me, I don't want them, I don't want them to not know. I have the ability to have a personal trainer and medication to help with, my binging disorder and, all these resources that are available to me that aren't available to everyone. And I think that as we talk about success on social media, we should do the same. I got lucky my first time. And if that didn't happen, I wouldn't have the platform I have now, right? If I would have made my first video and it did, 100 views, my second video, 100 views, I can guarantee I would not be at where I'm at now. So I know as an influencer, there are times I look at other influencers and what they have, or other influencers and their views, or other influencers and their opportunities. And I think, well, why can't that happen for me? And a lot of it is the luck of the draw of when your video gets pushed out and who it gets pushed out to. I was tanking for a really long time. I had hit about 2.4 million on TikTok and then was just dramatically free falling. And I had made a video about, my administrator being upset that I had bleached my hair, and it kind of did like a renaissance to my account and revamped it. I think it's just, there's things you can do to be more effective on it. But I think at the end of the day, which sucks hearing, a lot of it is dumb luck. And I don't want people to sit there and beat themselves up over it, because I come across accounts with 10,000 followers, 5,000 followers, 500 followers who have way better content than I ever will. They just haven't gotten lucky.
How many times do you wanted to give up on doing the content?
A lot. A lot. I want to do it until it doesn't feel good anymore. And there's been times where it doesn't feel good, or there's been times where personal information about me has been leaked, or this has been, put in here, and it makes me have to discuss something that, childhood trauma that I don't want to discuss. And in those cases where when you don't live your life ever wanting to be famous, be an influencer, be on TV, it's really difficult to play catch up with the people who have wanted to do that and have thought about what happens if they have, a PR nightmare or a fabricated article written about them. Me as a, gay Puerto Rican from Northern Indiana who had dreams of being a therapist, you know what I mean? I don't know how to navigate that, or still don't really. So there's been a lot of times I wanted to walk away, and a lot of times I see my account, nosediving. When you have 2.5 million followers, but only 8,000 people saw a video, it's I used to sit there and I used to be like, woe is me, this sucks, and everything is terrible. Then I thought, oh my God, 8,000 people just saw that video, and you're complaining about that. 8,000.
Exactly, 8,000. Imagine 8,000 people in a stadium.
Exactly.
Well, a stadium can fit way more, but you know what I mean. I mean,
a small stadium,
a super small stadium, but 8,000 people is a lot of people.
It's very fun. Just other day, I saw Tic Tac girl was saying, "You complaining about that you have only 30 people watched your video? I will be happy. People will be walking into my door, 30 people to look at me and my book." So you can just imagine these people in your room or in your apartment, whatever. Whatever. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, by the way, for first of all sharing the truth and telling people, hey, whatever fame that you see here or whatever you think it is, I mean, luck has a lot to do with it, and it's just a lot of different variables, right? I think that's very important because a lot of people just look at influencers or anyone successful, forget about just anyone across the spectrum, and they fail to see how they got there in the first place. Literally, like for us, I would say the number one reason why we're here today, I don't know, I think the number one thing would be luck. I grew up in poverty. I started ArgoPrep with Vlad over here eight years ago now. We're a team of 40 employees, fully bootstrapped. We have no outside venture capital funding. And people always, say, hey, well, you guys must be geniuses and you've executed things perfectly. Honestly, a lot of it was with luck. We came and entered into the market not realizing it was the right timing for the market, which means it was pure luck. All right, Tel, so I have to ask you about your nail polish. It's become somewhat of a trademark for you after your inspiring response to a student being bullied for wearing it. I'm curious, is there a particular reason why you wear it on one hand?
Yeah, so when I walked into school, the student only had one hand painted. His parents had painted it dark blue and light blue alternating. And so I think it's just kind of been like a little homage or a little nod at them. Since they came in with one hand painted, I came in the next day with only one hand painted. And it just kind of has like continued to remind me of him and why I wear it in the first place. Now I realize I've probably always wanted to, but I like to be reminded of that.
Yeah. And so talking about nail polishes, you started a nail polish company with your friend James called Boy Toy, and you've donated over $10,000 to charities so far. By the way, thanks so much for doing that. That's incredible. Yeah. So can you tell us more about the mission behind the company and what's the vision for the nail polish company?
Yeah. So I was a freshman when he was a senior. We were on the tennis team together, but I did musical theater with his younger sister. And he's just, straight white boy from Indiana. And he moved to LA, has been very successful out there with startups and such. And he had always wanted to, wear nail polish, but didn't feel like he even had the autonomy to. And so he had come up with this idea for, nail polish company Boy Toy, and kind of just put it in the back of his head. And he was scrolling through, I think it was TikTok, and saw me talking about nail polish. He thought, well, I remember Tal, and I want to start a nail polish company. I wonder if we could do this together. And so I told him the story about my student, and I went to CVS to go get nail polish and felt like everyone was staring at me, or I didn't have, the right to be there. And every photo was of, women wearing nail polish. And I thought of, Harry Styles and all of these bands that, maybe our dads listened to, like Kiss and they all had nails painted, and no one blinked an eye. And I thought, why don't we have this? And so James thought the same thing. So it's not just for boys or girls or anyone of any gender. It's for adults and kids and everyone in between. Just, to have something to kind of express themselves.
All right, Tal, we're going to play the blitz round of fun questions to ask you. What is the strangest or funniest DM you've ever received? Let's go with strangest.
Strangest. Yeah. Someone sent me a picture of a romantic book, like an adult romantic novel, and they were like, "Someone's using your photos," and it was not me. It was not me at all, but the model looked so much like me, and so did the, and I was like, "Oh my gosh!" And so I was like, I wanted them to tell me who the model was because it looked like my doppelganger, but way more muscular. Weirdest DM.
Well, if you want to file a lawsuit against him,
right?
Yeah, we have a lawyers. Okay, next question. What was the biggest celebrity moment you've had? Any crazy fun stories?
So the biggest celebrity, my favorite one, I'll say. I didn't even know they were famous for a while. So my husband and our friend now, it was his friend way before. Her name is Samantha Irby, or Sam Irby. She wrote, I think, 4 best-selling books now: Meaty, Oh Wow, No Thank You, and We're Never Meeting in Real Life. She's written for the new Sex and the City TV show, Shrill, the TV show. Very famous comedic writer, and I met her, and she married my husband and I, and I, even knowing her now, is like, I still get nervous. I love her. I think she's so fun. I've met other influencers and stuff, but then I think, like, I feel like they're more obtainable. Like, I know them, right. Like, I know that we do the same thing, but her, I just think so highly of. I'm always like, oh, my little celebrity moment.
So I know your favorite holiday is Halloween. What is your all-time favorite costume that you wore? And do you know what you're going to wear this year yet?
My all-time favorite costume I've worn. That's a tough one. I think one people might know me for was I dressed as Spider-Man once. This was the first one went viral before TikTok was even thought of, and I went to school, and I was wearing the suit. I had a pair of really baggy red sweats on, and so my colleagues were like, "Oh my gosh, why are you wearing sweats with?" I'm like, "Because it's spandex. It'd be so inappropriate to wear that to school." And they're like, right. "Oh, whatever." And so I was like, "No, it would." And so at the end of the day, I went into the staff bathroom, and I took a picture of me in the actual costume without the sweats on. And I was just like, "Oh, costume, and people blew up. And I was like, "Oh my God, I didn't wear it like that. I had sweats on. I just wanted people to see a picture of the costume without sweats." Right. So that might have been my favorite. My husband dressed like Deathpool. Why can't I think of his name? Deathpool.
Deadpool.
Oh,
I love Deadpool.
Yeah, Deadpool. So that we did that. Then this past year we were Tiny Chef and Ollie. I don't know if you know who Tiny Chef is. If you don't, obsessed.
I don't.
Oh my gosh, it's like a Nickelodeon kid show, but I'm obsessed with it.
Okay. We'll have to check it out.
I don't know this year. We had to think about that. We've come up with ideas. We've thrown some out there, but we'll have to see what we come up with.
Tel, thank you so much for coming in. It was such a pleasure getting to know you. Tel is currently on a comedy tour nationwide. If you want to have a great time, go to boredteachers.com right now to see if Tel Williams is coming to a city near you. Additionally, you can check out Tel on his podcast, Teachers Off Duty, and find him on Instagram at Mr. Williams Pre-K.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This has been a blast.